The Truth About Harry Quebert Affair. The book The Truth About the Harry Quebert Affair, which became a TV miniseries in 2018, is one of the most successful bestsellers. More than 3 million copies have been sold worldwide and translated into more than 30 countries, despite the book's 1,800 pages. The novel was written by Joel Dicker, a young 28-year-old Swiss writer. The novel's success is mainly due to a fast-paced and rhythmic plot which leaves the reader hanging and lets him to devour one page after the other in search of the truth about the Harry Quebert affair. The film stars Patrick Dempsey as Harry Quebert. On the other hand, Ben Schweizer will play the role of Marcus Goldman. The American actor achieved success after his role in the film The Story of a Book Thief. Finally, Christine Frosset, a Norwegian actress, will play the role of Nola Kellergan. Marcus Goldman, a young novelist, has become the new millionaire star of American literature after a particularly successful debut book. But the moment of glory is coming to an end, and the deadline for the delivery of his second novel is approaching. Marcus Goldman, as writer's block and try to get out of it, he asks help for Harry Quebert, a renowned novelist, as well as his personal friend, who proposes to spend some time at his home in Aurora, a small town in New Hampshire. Here, Marcus becomes involved in a worrying affair. 30 years earlier, in 1975, Nola Kellergan, a 15-year-old, had mysteriously disappeared, and the woman who had last seen her, Deborah Cooper, had been murdered. Not only that, by chance, Marcus discovered that his friend Harry, who was 34 years old at the time, had a love story with Nola. Shortly afterwards, the girl's body was found in Harry's garden, and the manuscript of The Origin of Evil, the book that has established Harry Quebert as a successful best-selling hero at the time, was found next to her corpse. On the title page of the book was a handwritten dedication for her. The writer who confessed to having a relationship's love with her and to having written the book for her is therefore accused of the murder. Marcus, however, is convinced of his innocence. Harry was not only a good teacher of writing for him, but also a teacher of life. So, back in New Hampshire, Marcus tries to find out more. He joins Sergeant Galahad in the investigation, and during visits to Harry's in prison, tries to get him to tell him more about what really happened that summer so many years before. Marcus also realized that in this murder and the accompanying investigation, he may have accidentally found the ideal story for his next book. Marcus starts to get Harry to tell him about the summer of 1975. He tells him that on the day of disappearance, Nola was to meet him at the motel, so that the two of them could run away together. He also interviewed the people closest to Nola, her father, Reverend Callaghan, Captain Pratt, who was Aurora's police chief in 1975, Travis Down, Pratt's assistant at the time, Jenny Quinn, Down's wife, and Nola's best friends, who reveals that the girl was being beaten and that also in 1975 she regularly went to the home of the financier Elijah Stern, a wealthy businessman who also owned Harry's house before the writer book hit. Meanwhile, the deadline of Marcus' book delivery is approaching, but he managed to move it in the hand of the host by promising a book about the Nola and Harry relationships. Sergeant and Marcus also go to Stern's house, who tells them about his old rival Luther Caleb, a man with an enormous talent for painting, but disfigured in a bidding with a strange fixation of blonde woman, who also in love with Nola and was found dead a few weeks after his disappearance. Before leaving, Marcus sneaks in an office where he finds a photographed portrait of Nola, but as he was not supposed to be in the room, he cannot use it as evidence. In addition, the writer discovers that Pratt had overlooked certain lists during the search for Nola and goes to question him with Galahad and obtains a confession. He had found out about the relationships between Harry and Nola, but she has performed sexual services on him to persuade him not to tell anyone about it. The next group is to arrest and reveals the police that Nola was meeting with Stern, the surgeon that managed to search Stern's house and use the portrait as evidence. They take on claims that the portrait had been painted by Caleb, and the Nolas had agreed to both exchange for a pension for paying rent on his house until he finished the book. The result of the graphological expertise of the dedication of the manuscript also arrived, confirming that it was not written by Harry. The writer is therefore exonerated. In the meantime, Brett is killed, and the blame for the handwriting evidence falls on Luther Caleb, who is accused of Nora's murder, thus closing the case. Marcus finished the book, achieving enormous success. Suddenly, however, a fact comes to light that threatens to invalidate the entire book. Nola's mother, who beat her in the story, was actually dead years before her daughter disappeared. Trying to clarify this, Marcus discovers that Nola suffered from dissociative episodes, during one of which, as a child, she set fire to her house and killed her mother. The pastor of a religious community, convinced that the child was possessed, had attempted to exorcise her. Reverend Callaghan then moved to Aurora with his daughter, but she was traumatized, and since then her crisis had worsened. The sweet-dreaming and romantic Nola had been joined by her mother's abusive and domineering personality, which Nola took on during her crisis by inflicting violent physical punishment and verbal abuse that the Reverend covered up by turning up the volume of the music. In addition, Nola's father shows Galahad some mysterious letter between Harry and Nola, later used as a starting point of the origin of Evil. Meanwhile, the Monterville police stop a man identified as Bobo Quinn for drunk driving, and Marcus and Galahad rush to question him. Bobo confessed that he who chased Nola the day she disappeared, taking responsibility for the double murder of the girl and Mrs. Cooper, but some inconsistency convinced Marcus that he's not telling the truth. Later, however, Stern makes an unexpected confession, calling everything into question. Elias confessed that she has discovered hidden letters sent to Nola in Luther's study, that he had taken him the same day, and later Luther had managed to escape from his residence in Black Monte Carlo, the same car Nola had been seen in on the day of her disappearance. They then discovered that Bobo was protecting his daughter Janine and his son-in-law Travis. The couple, ready to flee abroad, are stopped at customs. Then they discover. In this way, it turned out that Dawn and Pratt are the only ones responsible for the accidental death of Nola Callaghan on the night she was trying to escape with her beloved Harry, but also for the death of Luther Caleb and even Mrs. Cooper. Later, the two policemen organize a plan to get rid of Nola and Luther's bodies, burying the former in Quebert garden, while faking an accident for Caleb. Mrs. Cooper, on the other hand, is left in the house, making it look as if she had been robbed. The mystery is finally solved. Harry and Marcus, however, a final intense confrontation. It turned out Harry never actually wrote the origin of Evil. In fact, the real brother of the famous manuscript is Luther Caleb himself, who, driven by a deep and sincere love for Nola, writes all this letter for her. A year after the truth about the Harry Quebert affair by Marcus Golden, his best-selling book in the entire United States. In Somerday, Marcus has opened a hostel for young writers in a place of the Ocean House. The newspaper announced they realized the Seagulls of Somerday, a posthumous work by Luther Caleb. Harry chose to credit him in an attempt to pay him back for having appropriated the origin of the evil in the past, aware, however, of the impossibility of doing all the evil he had caused. The book is considered by critics to be a masterpiece. The narrative of the miniseries almost entirely follows the setting of the book. Starting backwards, as in the book, the story begins with the double murder that occurred on the night of 30 August 1975. In the book, the writer has decided to arrange the 31 chapters in descending order as a sort of countdown, each one introduced by a piece of advice from Harry Quebert on how to write a novel. In the novel, the main narrative voice of Marcus Goldman gradually reveals the lives of the unexpected citizen of Aurora, but the reader is often confronted with a narrative conduct from numerous other points of view. First and foremost, of course, that of Henry Quebert, to whom Goldman entrusts the floor and who, in recounting his own love relationships with Nola, becomes a second-rate narrator. But we also case in which entire narrative sections follow the perspective of the other minor character, but destined to play a fundamental role in the unfolding of events. These expedients allow us to become more immersed in the plot, which full of twists and turns, and the reader himself ends and becoming a citizen of Aurora, who, by listening in the various voices of the people involved in the events of 1975, realized the events of that dramatic summer. While watching the episode of the series may seem like reading the page of the novel, this time, however, giving the character a face, a voice, a physical and external traits that are only vaguely mentioned in the book. The constant flashback back to the summer of 1975, however, often risks slowing down the action considerable and distracting the audience, which instead try to follow the fast-moving investigation and trial of Henry Quebert in 2008. A big difference concerns the dialogue between the protagonists, which in the book seems to be polished, whereas in the series they sometimes appear too didactic and unemotional and the protagonist more stereotyped. There are also some differences in the description of certain scenes between the book and the film that are however not so relevant to the story, such as the depth of the pages. The publisher Marx to warn him that the first 50 pages of the highly anticipated new book have been stolen and are already in the possession of the editorial office of the major American newspaper. In the book, the thief's modus operandi is somewhat retro,